I want to catch up now, though, with Barbara Heineback. As you know, was a Democrat advisor in the Democrat White House, the Clinton White House. She joins us now from the Sydney CBD. No, she joins us from Wollongong, actually, to talk about what's happening in her native America. Thanks for joining us again, Barbara.
Thank you.
Are you relieved, at least, that we've not seen riots and unrest so far in the wake of the Derek Chauvin verdict? And was that contingent upon the verdict?
Yes, unfortunately, it was contingent upon the verdict. I'm relieved. We saw a man be killed and, couldn't get any breath, any air in his lungs for 8+ minutes. And so the verdict was a correct one, but it's a bittersweet day for America. Lots of lives have been lost. This happened in May. Here we are in the middle or toward the end of April, and there's just been so many facets to this. And I'm sorry, as we look back, that it's been politicized. It's been a part of political greed and the greed of any number of organizations that have gotten involved. And some of our politicians, Maxine Waters mostly, who has just embarrassed the government, embarrassed the Congress. And I was frankly appalled today when we saw every single Democrat stood by her side, and I couldn't believe it, but at least she's been stripped of the chairmanship. But, George Floyd was representing more than George Floyd. It was many, many years of what has happened with police brutality. And what it also represented, this is the first time ever that a Minnesota police has been found guilty for having killed a black man.
Yeah, look, as you say, this was a traumatic episode. The videotape, the fact that everybody saw it so people could make up their own minds, not only made it very emotional for everybody in the US and around the world, it also made it more clear-cut for the court case. But the real concern is the way the political apparatus is prepared to weigh into the judicial process. If this doesn't get pulled back soon in the United States, you're going to have mob justice, and it's going to be very, very hard to get back to a fair and independent judiciary.
Yeah, well, this came pretty close to it because, in some ways, because I don't understand why the jury was not sequestered. And there were just so many areas where it was atypical of how a normal trial would have taken place. And it played into the hands, I think, of politicians, of the media, who was setting the stage. And, the die was cast many months earlier. And when you had the protests and you had the brutality that was taking place across the country for so many months, and the media refused to cover it, and yet they try to juxtapose parts of this particular case, it doesn't bode well for our police. I heard your interview just before you brought me on, and that's sad, because they're there to protect us. And at the end of the day, who will suffer the most? It's going to be the poorer communities, often people of color, that need the police more than anyone else almost. And, like Martin Luther King said, and I can't repeat it enough, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth leaves everybody blind and toothless. And so there is no excuse for criminality of any kind.
Yeah, and the politicians on all sides, the very last thing they should ever do is justify or encourage violence. And sadly, we've seen too much of that. Let's hope everything remains calm, most likely to because of the verdict in this case. Thanks so much for joining us, Barbara. Always good to talk to you.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Thanks.
Barbara Heineback there on some of the disturbing trends in American politics and in the way justice is handled there.